Hi everyone, my name is Rose Latang and welcome to my channel. After putting in about 50 hours of seat time on my 2022 Sherco 250 SC factory model, I'd love to share some of my thoughts. I've had a ton of people come through my Instagram DMs asking questions about this machine. Oh, and if you're on Instagram, please check out my profile if you haven't already. Before we start, I just want to give you guys some context on where I'm coming from. Prior to this machine, I was on a 2014 KTM 200 XCW, and before that, I ran several older style KTMs, the EXC models, mainly 125s and 200s. This is my first big displacement two-stroke. Most of my past riding experience consists of cross-country racing and just general single-track riding. I've also done some competitive trials, so I do have experience riding a trials bike. And over the last couple of years, I've been getting more and more into hard enduro riding. So in total, I have about a decade worth of seat time, and I really hope that this review will help shed some light on some of the questions you may have about this machine. As you will see throughout this video, the trails we ride are not the most flowy. They tend to be first gear trails with a lot of bar lock turns. They're dirty and not well defined, as we are the only ones who ride them on a regular basis. We do have some faster sections that can be ridden in second gear, but for the most part, we ride extremely tight trails with many sharp corners that require the step pivot technique. First detail I want to cover is why I chose to go with Sherco. 1. The carbureted engine. My husband is my mechanic and he is very comfortable troubleshooting and tuning carburetors and has no interest in switching to TPI, mainly because he does all the bike maintenance himself and prefers working with something he is familiar with. When a TPI system fails, it usually involves having to bring the machine to the dealer to run some tests, and this is not a viable option for us since we live too far away from most, if not all, dealerships. 2. The KYB suspension. I've been on a KTM for many years now and never felt truly satisfied with the WP suspension, even after swapping out the springs for my weight. Spending thousands on upgrading the internal components would have most likely resolved my issues, but this time around, I was ready to start on a fresh platform and had only heard positive feedback on this KYB suspension. According to many, the KYB suspension works almost flawlessly right out of the crate, and I'll elaborate on my overall experience with this bike later in the video. Second detail I want to touch on is why I chose the 250 and not the 300. 1. I only weigh about 132 pounds, so a 250 two-stroke engine should have more than enough power to lug me up gnarly hills. 2. Since I'm a smaller rider, I'm always looking for the lightest feeling option available. This is why I stayed on my 200 for so many years before upgrading. And as far as the Sherco goes, the 250 and 300 are basically identical, with the only major difference being the displacement. This means that they most likely weigh the same on a scale. However, a 250 engine generally feels lighter over a 300, most likely due to less rotating mass inside the engine and less low-end torque. Since we're on the topic of torque, having excessive amounts of power at your fingertips isn't always better, especially for a small woman like me who struggles with repetitive strain injury in my hands. having less grunt helps me stay on my bike longer as I'm less likely to get fatigued prematurely. And lastly, 4, from having tried many 250s and 300s throughout my riding career, I've always found the 250 motor to be more playful and forgiving. And one last detail, why the factory model? 1, we wanted the closed cartridge fork, which is KYB's top-of-the-line product. We're already investing a lot of money into these brand new bikes. Why not go the extra mile at this point? 2, we also wanted the fan and coolant overflow tank for a cooler running engine, since the majority of our riding consists of slow, technical terrain that requires a lot of clutch slip. And 3, the factory model also comes with a skid plate. However, we quickly ditched it for a better product, and I'll be covering that shortly. Now, I'm going to walk you guys through some of the add-ons and modifications I've done to my bike within the first 10 hours in order to make it more robust for hard enduro. No need to grab a pen and paper. I have included all the links to these products and where to buy them in the video description below. Flo Motorsports Pro 160 clutch lever. With my repetitive strain injury, a lighter clutch pull is something I'm always after. So I decided to try this product, and so far it's been working great. The on-the-fly adjustability and ballpoint pivot is really nice to have. Pro Taper Profile Pro XPS brake lever. The stock lever didn't have enough adjustability for my small hands. I absolutely love the feel of this product and the on-the-fly adjustable lever reach. Seal Savers zip-on fork covers. Super easy to install and remove for cleaning. They protect the seals from dust, dirt, and mud. These need to be checked periodically as you don't want any accumulation of debris rubbing up against your fork seals. Aluminum Radiator Guard Kit by Motoes. This product is very well designed, and so far they have taken tons of impact with no signs of twisted or bent radiators. Acerbis X-Factory handguards. I have to admit these are not the most durable. I'll be looking at replacing these with a more robust set. If you have any recommendations, pop them in the comments below. Front and rear brake discard by Enduro Engineering. They are made from strong, lightweight aluminum. These are a must if you plan to ride through rocks and boulder fields. I definitely feel more at ease knowing my rotors are protected. Rear brake pedal tip by Enduro Engineering. This was added on only recently due to the stock one being destroyed, most likely from dropping the bike on a rock. Polisport swingarm protectors. These were added only recently as I started noticing some scrapes on my swingarm from riding through boulders, which we often do. The product fits nice and snug against the swingarm and is made from impact-resistant plastic. Front forks and rear shock resprung for my weight. This was done initially with the help of Quad Expert, which is the dealership we purchased our bikes from. The springs were procured through Stadium Suspension. No lowering was done, and for those who are curious, I'm 5'6". Rear chain guide by TM Design Works. This product is way more robust over the stock unit and is a must when navigating through boulder fields. Bash plate with pipe guard by Motoes. This was the most affordable product of this style we could find. It was easy to install and fit the bike very well. The aluminum unit weighs about 6.3 pounds. I honestly feel so much more at ease navigating through gnarly terrain with this setup. Note that the plastic link protection was sold separately. Ignition and clutch covers by Enduro Hog. These are made from lightweight and durable plastic. Definitely a must if you want to keep your engine looking like new. Geomax gummy, rear tire, and Tubliss. I have to admit, my knowledge on tires is pretty limited. I typically run a gummy tire paired with a Tubliss, which allows me to run around 5 psi. I ran the stock rear FIM Michelin Enduro medium with the factory tube for about 20 hours before installing the gummy and Tubliss. JD jetting kit. This was installed as soon as we brought the bikes home. The stock jetting was too rich. We went slightly leaner to achieve optimal throttle response and peak performance. These Shercos truly run flawlessly. We added Pro Taper pillow top grips, which are much more comfortable over stock grips. We geared down our rear sprocket from a 50 tooth to a 52, just to make life easier in technical terrain. And last but not least, I got my girl Poire to make me some decals with my race numbers. She works with Kutvec America. Their product is ultra thick and super easy to install. Go check her out on Instagram. Here we have my husband Jeremy chasing me through the pine trees. This is generally a second gear trail with some tight sections that require some first gear riding and occasional bar locks. In several spots, the trees are less than handlebar width. So much fun. My overall experience on this bike has been nothing short of amazing. This platform is a huge upgrade over my 2014 200 XCW in all areas: engine, suspension, handling, and even cosmetics. Let's face it, the Shercos do look pretty darn sweet. The engine is very smooth and has more than enough lugging capabilities for the type of riding I do. I'm thoroughly impressed at just how strong this engine is off the bottom, especially for a 250. With a little bit of clutch work, it will tractor up just about anything. What's unique about this bike is the electronic power valve system. At the flick of a switch, you can decide whether you want a smoother, more linear power curve or a more aggressive power curve with a stronger hit at the top. The map switch on the Shercos not only changes the ignition timing, but also changes how the power valves physically open inside the motor. The difference between the mild and the wild setting is significant, unlike other brands who only rely on ignition timing. The Shercos actually utilize mechanical components inside the motor to achieve the different power curves. The counterbalance shaft on this machine is not perfect. Initially, I felt some slight vibrations in the foot pegs. However, I quickly got used to it and don't really feel it anymore. A perfectly counterbalanced engine will have a more linear feel in terms of power delivery. It's sort of like having a large flywheel weight and will flatten the power curve to a certain degree. I do feel like Sherco intentionally designed the counterbalance shaft to have the best of both worlds. Some reduction in vibrations while maintaining some spunk in the power delivery. The power curve on this bike is definitely playful and has a nice hit. On the wild setting, I generally switch to the mild setting when I'm riding really technical or slippery terrain. I much prefer the wild setting when riding cross-country or higher speed double-track trails. As for the suspension, even after being resprung for my weight, felt stiff compared to my XCW, which had also been resprung. Being a small rider, I immediately noticed this. At first, I was a little concerned that it would be too stiff for me and tire me out prematurely, but I gave it a chance. Initially, I felt the stiffness in the more slow technical stuff, but I also instantly noticed that the suspension performed exceptionally well in extremely rough and choppy terrain at moderate to higher speeds. This bike really soaks up all the bumps when ridden more aggressively. This was definitely not the case with my XCW, which had a really plush feel. Since I generally ride more slow and technical terrain, it took about 10 or 15 hours to adjust. then something positive ended up happening. It forced me to ride a lot faster in the slow technical stuff. And now that I have more displacement, I can, in many instances, lug the bike in a taller gear, which allows me to ride faster and float over obstacles, instead of absorbing or contouring every bump, hole, and log, etc. This bike has truly up-leveled my riding in so many ways. Now I actually really like having the suspension slightly on the stiffer side. Getting decent airtime on this bike is not a problem. Last but definitely not least, the frame geometry. This is probably my favorite characteristic of the Sherco. When I first got on this machine, the foot peg to handlebar position felt very strange compared to my KTM. It sort of felt like I was on a trials bike all over again. It was designed in a way that it positions your body into a more planted state. This is a very hard concept to articulate as it is a felt experience. This was actually the very first thing I noticed about this bike when I hopped on it initially. I dabbled with the idea of getting a different set of foot pegs and handlebars to correct this, as many have suggested. However, I gave myself more seat time, and it didn't take very long to adapt to this platform. I quickly realized that it handled exceptionally well in really tight and technical situations where balance and bar lock turns are necessary. I'm really glad I stuck it out and didn't even try to fiddle around with gadgets and doodads. My honest opinion, the stock setup is usually the best setup for most average riders.
There you go. Ah.
This video, please hit the subscribe button or leave a comment down below. Don't forget to check out my Instagram page. Quick shout out to FXR Moto and EVS Sports for the support throughout this 2022 Moto season. I'm just getting started over here, so stay tuned. Lots more to come. See you on the trails.